The tool breeders, first introduced in C.M. Kosemen's 2006 book All Tomorrows, are an aquatic post-human race. Like all of the post-humans that we meet in the book, the tool breeders began life as star people who were genetically engineered by Earth and Mars scientists somewhere around the 31st century after a cataclysmic war between the two planets which almost brought the human race to extinction. To ensure true unity going forward, and that such a war would never happen again, the Star People were created and, possessing heightened skills, intellect and capabilities, would head out into the galaxy to explore, colonize and terraform new planets so that mankind may live on. The future of the species seemed secure. That was until the Star People made contact with an intelligent alien race for the first time. It was not a peaceful encounter. The Q, a race more than 1 billion years old, were insane religious zealots who saw it as their divine right to rule the galaxy and, having long since mastered genetic engineering, were able to change any lifeforms that they came across into anything that they wanted them to be. The Star People were wiped out in less than 1,000 years by the invading Q menace, and in their place were left an unknown number of strange creatures created by the Q from harvested human DNA. The Q eventually left them behind, and they began the slow and painful evolutionary process once again. On one planet, the Star People who had once lived there were gone, but a human-derived ocean dweller was left in its place. These beings are known simply as the Swimmers. The Swimmers were not the only aquatic lifeforms that the Q created from the Star People, and it is stated in the book that all other forms, such as the limbless, ribbon-like eel people and the enormous human whales, went extinct once the Q disappeared. The Swimmers managed to survive, however, by feeding on fish and crustaceans which had been imported from Earth many thousands of years ago. In appearance, the Swimmers look like a sort of strange human-shark hybrid. They still possess very human-like eyes which are protected by blubbery eyelids. Their nose looks somewhat human, and their mouths seem to sit in a natural grin, which also echoes their human past. They have sharp, shark-like teeth, some of the top row being visible when their mouths are closed, and their necks are very wide yet seem to still resemble that of a vertebrate, meaning that they would have been able to use their heads to look around independently of the rest of their torso, unlike sharks, whales and dolphins. Their flippers, upon first glance, look very much like that of an aquatic mammal, but upon closer inspection it can be seen that human-like hands lie just beneath the surface. They possess a dorsal fin which would aid in their lives underwater and provide them with stability and balance. What were once human legs are now a pair of tail fins, eerily similar to that of an Earth shark. It makes one wonder whether the Q had once visited Earth many tens of millions of years ago and are responsible for the creation of the sharks native to our planet. The resemblance is quite strong. It is stated in the book that the Swimmers were able to speak to each other, but they were unable to understand each other. This would have made for a lonely and isolated life in the dark, murky ocean depths of this far-flung planet. The Swimmers were the most successful predators on their planet, and so they would dominate the oceans for hundreds of thousands of years, slowly changing and evolving on their own and, like their cousins on other former Star People worlds, eventually re-evolved their intelligence and self-awareness. They would become a race known as the Tool Breeders. The Tool Breeders were an intelligent, sapient race, resembling a human-dolphin hybrid. Theirs was one of the most advanced of all future human societies, and their achievements in genetic engineering were perhaps rivaled only by the Q. Because the Tool Breeders were an aquatic lifeform, the use of fire, the cornerstone of industrial engineering, was not a possibility. Instead, they began to create the tools and equipment that they needed out of other living organisms that shared their underwater habitat. It started early on with the domestication of sea life, which runs parallel to the domestication of wolves and other animals by their Homo sapiens ancestors. They would use the sea life in their vicinity for hunting and tracing purposes, before progressing over the millennia to the point where they had achieved the ability to genetically engineer any and all life forms to whim, for any purpose that they so desired. Eventually, they reached the point where all of their tools were organic life forms, and they lived within living cities made from heart-like creatures that would pump out nutrients to a network of self-repairing living conduits, their underwater equivalent of a power grid. Theirs was an infrastructure that was made up entirely of genetically modified living creatures. The tool breeders' homes were large exoskeletal beasts, which used their bioluminescence to provide them with a light source. They had medicinal sea squirts and flickering cephalopod skin televisual devices, among many other devices which were alive and relied on the power grid which fed them liquid nutrients. Eventually they reached a point where they had achieved a complete mastery of genetic engineering. At this point they did not even need to use living creatures, as they could now simply use and manipulate a single small tissue culture sample or a few stem cells to solve any problem that they may have encountered. The tool breeders were now the undisputed dominant life forms on their ocean world, and with this came their all too human desire for further expansion. Once they had achieved all that they could on their planet, it was time to look to the stars for more water worlds to colonize. This they did, and they spent many millions of years spreading throughout the galaxy. Eventually they made contact with other future human species, their distant cousins on other worlds who were also now highly evolved, after being modified into the equivalents of cavemen or animals by the Q. These were the Satyriacs and the Killer Folk, who had, a few thousand years before, established a second galactic empire. Using living radio arrays, the tool breeders were able to initiate contact and were then free to join the new empire, of which several other future human species would join over the ensuing tens of millions of years. Within this time, the tool breeders, along with their fellow members of the Empire, made advances and achievements that would be unimaginable and incomprehensible to even the brightest minds of the 21st century. However, all good things must eventually come to an end. The tool breeders, along with all other members of the Empire, were in the end wiped out by the Gravital, a race of former humans turned machines, descended from another Q creation named the Ruin Haunters, who held the insane belief that they were the only true heirs to the Star People and took it upon themselves to wipe out all other species. In the end, the tool breeders, like all other life forms to have ever existed or ever will exist, became extinct, but they had used their time wisely and, despite living beneath the ocean waves, lived lives just as human as the ones we live today. And so ends one of the most incredible and alien journeys ever to be undertaken by a human lineage. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and would like to support the channel, then please hit the like button, share this video and subscribe to be notified of future uploads. This has been Beware the Q, and I'll see you in the next video.